It's Thursday afternoon, it's Litsoc, but of course it's not just any Thursday. Today is Thursday the 11th of November, Remembrance Day, and as we all know, Remembrance Day it exists for us to commemorate everyone who fought and in particular died for us in World War I and World War II, plus other conflicts, so that we can enjoy the freedoms we have today, and we must always remember. Now I'm going to start off Litsoc with a couple of quotes. This one by Lawrence Binyon is one that I expect you all will have heard. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. They shall not weary them, nor their years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. I'm sure you've all heard that, yes? So that's the way we're saying about how, we must never forget, we must always remember. And then I'm going to follow it with another quote, perhaps it's a little less well known, by a Polish writer. I can't even say their name, but they said, the living owe it to those who no longer can speak to tell their story for them. And there is no more powerful way, of course, to tell stories than in books and literature. And we have a myriad of examples. So we're all going to talk about some favourite examples of World War I and World War II fiction. So I'm just going to kick us off by talking about The Skylark's War by Hilary Mackay. Anyone heard of this one? Yes, have you read it? No. Okay, I urge you all to read it. It is utterly fantastic. I think it's the best World War I, World War II novel to come out, certainly for young people, in the last 5-10 years. It is that good. What I like about it, so the basic story is that it's the family, and they live a nice idyllic childhood. The main character is Clary, and she's got her older brother Peter, and they go down to Cornwall for the summer, and they have a really good time and enjoy the family. And then they have I think his name, Rupert. They have a cousin called Rupert, who's always there in Cornwall, and they all bond and they have a deep, meaningful relationship. But Peter then gets enlisted and conscripted to gets called up to fight in the war, and so it'll kind of get shattered. So what this novel focuses on are those who are left behind, because obviously we all know about the experiences of those who were in the trenches, who were fighting in the war, but this looks at the emotional effects on those who are left behind, and that's what really works about this. Now the characters are really well drawn, they're beautifully illustrated. They're the sort of people who you want to be friends with. It kind of reminds me of if anyone's ever read Famous Five or anything like that, So the characters are sort of similar. They have that sort of tight-knit bond with them, and it sort of like really examines how things sort of like change when their relationships put under strain. Okay, so I'm just going to read a little bit. This is from so Rupert has. This is about 100 pages in. Rupert has been called up, and he sends a letter to Clary. In the new year, they had news from Rupert that he was being posted to France. He sent a jubilant letter to Clary. Nothing could be better. Bonjour, la belle France, and goodbye, dusty old Oxford. Clary, I rely on you and Peter to pass on all the gossip. Hurrah, said Clary. The grandparents won't be able to get him now. However many people grandfather goes to talk to in London. Are you mad? Asked Peter. La belle France? I bet he doesn't even know what he's fighting for. He's not fighting. He's not a proper soldier, said Clary. He wants some fun, that's all. There's wanting fun, said Peter, and there's shooting people. Rupert would never shoot anyone. Peter looked at the photograph that arrived with the letter. It showed Rupert in uniform holding a gun. He had signed it, Love to everyone, et au revoir, mes amis, à bientôt. He thinks he's in France already, said Peter. I suppose he won't have to shoot anyone if he can get close enough. That's a bayonet fitting on his gun. What's a bayonet fitting? Asked Clary. It's a long, thin... Peter suddenly stopped. What use, after all, to frighten Clary? He tried to speak more flippantly. Rupert had better watch out for German boys. They might want some fun too. Peter's voice trailed away. What right had he to be flippant? Even more than he hated the thought of fighting, he hated the fact that his own cowardly jump from a train meant he could never take part. So earlier in the story, he did this, and so he can't fight in the war. He injured himself. It was hard to hide the despair he felt, for Clary in his comfortless house, for ridiculous Ruperts, for the summers that were so far away, for all the Ruperts and Clarys caught up in his hardly understood war, and for himself, and his aching stiffened leg that would always hold him aside. Presently he reached out for Clary's hand, and later he began to cry, and after a while Clary whispered, "Does it hurt?" And he said, "Yes, yes it does, I'm sorry." So you can see that's focusing on someone who's left behind. Now what you have to remember about World War One, we all think about what a horrible thing it was just, everyone had a traumatizing experience in the trenches. But before, in the early stages of the war, people thought it was going to be a great big laugh, a big joke. We're all going to have fun, and you'd have like big lots of friends. Just imagine, in your forms, you all as a group sign up to fight in the war, and you think it's all going to be fun and games. And so that's why Peter is like very upset that he can't go. But of course, the truth about how it actually is yet to come. But yeah, it's a really good book, and there is a sequel as well that came out recently called the Skylark's Song. I can't remember, but there is a sequel too, which I haven't read yet. But I'm sure if it's half as good as this, it'll be worth reading too. Okay, so who would like to go next? Sophie, come and have a seat and tell us about an old favourite.
This is weird.
Yes, it's a low seat, but comfortable.
Okay, this is Warhorse, and it's about a horse, obviously, who goes off to fight the war, and various of his owners die, and then he is captured by the Germans, and it's set in World War One, and when they had like the cavalry, basically he was taken away from his home in England and taken like overseas, and in the end his owner comes looking for him and applies to be like a vet and look after the horses, and when they think you find him, you have to pay to take a lot to take them back to England because they're in France, I think. And yeah.
Okay. Have you all read it? Mm-hmm. Yes, pretty much all of you. So what do you like? Why do you like it so much, Sophie?
Because it's got horses in it. And I love horses.
Of course, but there's loads of other books that have horses in it too. This is a different kind of horse book. You don't get much books about horses in war.
It's very like emotional, and because it's described from the horse's point of view, it's like it's different.
It's different. Yeah, it is different. So, have you got any sort of like favourite parts without giving away spoilers? Because there might be some people watching who haven't read it.
I like the ending where the boy realizes that this is the same horse that was his, because it's really sad, but really happy at the same time.
Yes. So, is that your favourite Michael Morpurgo book?
Yeah.
Yes. Have you read his other World War One? His other famous World War One novel?
No. There's also a sequel to this, by the way.
What's the sequel called?
It's called Farm Boy.
Farm Boy, yes. That's quite a more recent one. So, can anyone know which one I'm talking about when I say his other really famous World War One novel? Yes, Emily?
Oh, there's the one, Shadow? No, that's not.
No.
I don't know if it's by Michael Morpurgo, but is it Street Shark?
No. No? Private Peaceful?
Oh, I haven't
yes,
read
that was also by Michael Morpurgo. Yes, remember that one?
That's like one of the only ones I haven't read.
I love
Right.
that one. It's very good.
You read that one. Now, of course, Sienna, you did a whole Litsoc on Michael Morpurgo, didn't you? Did you talk about that one? I don't know if you can remember. It was a while ago now. Did you talk about that one?
I don't remember.
You can't remember. Well, it's on Litsoc, so you can check it out. So what do you think of... Have you read both Private Peaceful and Warhorse?
I did, but quite a few years ago now.
Okay, so what did you make of them both?
I remember really liking them. They were quite grounded. Yeah, I don't really remember.
Okay, so no one's read... Well, Private Peaceful is really good. So, but what are our thoughts on Warhorse then? What do we think of Warhorse? Do we like it? Yes, why do you like it, Emily?
Well, I liked it how the horse kept like having such, like some people, its life was really different to most horses. Like horses normally nowadays, it's like you're at stables, you make people ride, and then you like go into competitions and stuff. But this horse actually went like all over the place and had loads of different owners, and like it was really emotional how each of them loved him, but then they had to let go at one point. But then at the end, no spoilers, but like it was difficult for me to know who the horse should go to.
Because he had a meaningful bond with pretty much all the owners. Has anyone read Black Beauty?
Yeah.
You must have, yes, or at least heard of it.
I've heard of it, I haven't read it.
I've read it.
Considered to be horses. Yes, you like horses. So Black Beauty, of course, is probably the most famous horse book ever written, or horse novel ever written. And of course, there's a similar vibe in terms of like different owners. That's why I mentioned it going on there. But of course, Black Beauty doesn't have to go to war. So there's the difference. Thank you very much, Sophie. So, Emily, why don't you go next, because you've got another Michael Morpurgo book there, and tell us a bit about this one.
Well, this is An Eagle in the Snow, and it's at the beginning. It starts off. Well, I read it a while ago, but it starts off with someone telling this boy about a story about his friend, I think, and it goes back to World War One, and they were both really they were quite young, but they were going to the war, and his friend is from his point of view, looking at his friend, I think, and he goes to war, and he doesn't really want to kill many people. He doesn't want to kill, but he's gone anyway. And there's this one person out on the battlefield, and he's just in the middle there, and people are telling him to shoot him because he's from the opposition, but he lets him go.
Okay.
And then I think he gets to go back home again because I think he gets injured, maybe. And then afterwards he finds out that he looks in the TV and he sees that that same person that he let walk away from the battlefield, he sees him on not TV, I think, maybe he didn't have TV, but he sees him in the cinema. I was in the cinema. He goes to this big cinema area and there's like an advert right through their movie. It was his face on the screen, and that was the person that he let free.
Oh.
And that person is now causing a million other problems to happen.
This person.
I think I've heard of that. I've heard of the story, and I'm not quite sure if this is true. But I haven't read the book, but I have heard of that story.
Is this based on a true story? If you've heard of this story, because something occurred to me as well. The next question I want to ask you, is this set during World War II? Yeah, it's
Both.
Oh, it's World War One and World War II.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, I think I know what this is.
Yes.
I think I know what this is. Is the person who I'm thinking is the person who he let go? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this actually happened. I can't remember his name. The British soldier. He was a private, and he didn't shoot him because he was wounded. I don't know what the context was, what the actual... All I know is that he had Hitler, because it was Hitler, he was just another soldier. He had him in his sights, could have shot him, but he didn't, because he was wounded.
That's a real what-if story, isn't it?
It's a huge what-if story, a big what-if scenario. Of course, who knows, it might have been infinitely worse.
Just don't know.
Because you got to think about the state. I don't know how much you all know about Nazi Germany or how Germany was before Hitler rose to power, but it wasn't Hitler. The way that country was, it could well have been someone else who exploited that.
People behind the scenes.
Yes,
But
exactly.
in the book, he actually he goes up to the mountain. I think it's because of An Eagle in the Snow. I think because he goes up to the mountain because it's winter, and he tries to stop Hitler. He tries to tell him to stop, because now he knows that it was his fault that this is all happening now, and he feels really bad about it. But I don't really remember what happens if he's able to or not, but even if I did remember it would be a spoiler.
Right, okay.
But he tries to stop Hitler from doing all these things.
Was it a while ago you read this book?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think it worked in real life.
Okay. No, of course it did in real life. Well, and I don't think it actually happened. I don't think he had the chance to try to reason with Hitler. I mean, which sounds like a strange thing to try to do anyway. So look, this is not one I mean, Michael Purley, he's done so many books, but this is not one I've read. No one else has read this one, I take it? No?
It's quite new. When did that one come out? I don't know that one. Should say it.
If you open up the cover and go to another page and another one, there you go, that left-hand page, it should tell you what year it was published.
2015.
2015.
Oh, yeah.
Reasonably new then.
Really new.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's one of my favourite Michael Morpurgo books, along with Flamingo Boy.
Right, I can see why. Can you just read what it says in the back there, the blurb?
This blurb or this blurb?
Maybe the one on the back and then the one on the inside jacket cover.
All Billy could think now was that before he had done the wrong thing, and now he must do the right thing. He had to right the wrong he had done. He had to stop the suffering before it began. That was all there was to it. He had no choice.
Okay.
And 1940, the train is under attack from German fighters. In the darkness, sheltering in the railway tunnel, the stranger's in the carriage with Barney, and his mother tells him a story to pass time. And what a story! The story of a young man, a young soldier in the trenches of World War I, who, on the spur of the moment, had done what he thought was the right thing. It turned out to have been the worst mistake he could have ever made, a mistake he must put right before it is too late.
So yes, I mean, I don't know about you, but this makes me definitely want to read that book. It'd be interesting to see what interpretation he has in it. Now on the cover we've got a dog there and an eagle. So do they feature prominently in it, a dog and an eagle?
I don't really remember.
You can't remember.
No.
Okay. Interesting. Right, well, thank you very much. That's it. That is a great choice. It's very intriguing. So, thank you, Emily. Right, Dea, what have you got for us?
I've got Goodnight, Mr. Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's...
Who's read Goodnight, Mr. Tom? It's okay, don't get distracted by someone getting biscuits out of a packet. So you've all read it apart from Evie? And Emily. Okay, so could you tell the benefit of those who have not read it what the story is?
So it's about like this boy called William Beach, and he basically is evacuated from his town. It was a while ago since I read it.
Okay, girls, don't worry about that. You all seem to be very hung up on, I've read it a while ago. Don't worry about it. Just tell us what you can remember and the broad story.
So he goes to live with Mr. Tom, and at first he's like really scared of Mr. Tom because like Mr. Tom's a bit like grumpy in a sort of way.
Show the cover to everyone. That might indicate it. Yes.
So
yes, indeed.
He goes there and he's a little bit scared, and then one time he wets the bed, and it's a little bit going uphill from there because he gets to sort of fit in a little more. And then I think he one time, I'm skipping a lot, but one time he actually goes back because I think the war is like over once he's like settled in with Mr. Tom. So he goes back, and then he actually gets trapped by his mum in his old house because I think he did something really bad, and God sent a baby to them as a present, and then he basically gets trapped in a cellar, and then Mr. Tom comes all the way back.
The baby. Yeah, his mum's not very nice.
No. She gets like in the story, it's like wax on him, like the belt, literally on his back.
Yep.
And then, Mr. Tom comes to save him, and then like the door's locked and they can't find the mother. And then I think later on they find out that the mother killed herself, drowned herself. And then he goes back, and it was his birthday party. And then like this was then like the war was happening when it came to like where they are, and they were having like a birthday party, and someone left the door open and light was going out, and then they got told shut the door, and then the war happened. Now he stays with Mr. Tom.
Yeah. So why have you picked that one then?
It's one that I read, and it was a really good one, and it was sort of like one war coming to the other and other people getting prepared.
A bit like the last one, that was one war interfering with the next, so to speak.
Because it was like they move away to go to safety, and then like they find out on the news that like I think it's the Germans who were starting to attack the way where they are coming, and then they all have to put out their blackouts. Oh, and Sammy, who is the dog, he's very good. He's a sheepdog. And he's so whilst
Willie actually, whilst he was like doing a planting, and whilst they were building the shed, I think whilst they were trying to grow their crops, like Mr. Tom was trying to grow his crops, that's when he first met Sammy with a horror, because he got a bit scared.
Yes.
Yes. Doesn't William, he comes from London, he goes to the country, doesn't he? And
Yeah.
He's really scared of all the cows and the animals because he's never seen them before.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the story, I remember. That's probably why he's scared of the dog, isn't it? 'Cause
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, and then I think when he returns to his mother, he's like, there's a dog called Sammy, and then the mum's like, you've been with a dog?
Yeah, because I guess in London they would be a little bit more,
Yeah.
I don't know.
They probably weren't kept as
Things like
domestic pets as much then as they are now.
Yeah.
I mean, they were around, of course, but
Yeah.
not to the extent they are now.
More cats, I think, wasn't it?
I don't know. I'll have to look into it.
And
But yes, go on.
I can't remember who, but I think someone dies in it.
Someone dies, his best friend dies.
Yeah, because
Don't give away spoilers.
Remember to, because I haven't read it.
Yes, there are people who haven't read it around the table, and people at home who haven't read it as well who are watching.
anyway, someone dies and it's really unexpected, and Willie was trying to say, don't go, but he went.
Yeah.
He's also an artist. Like,
Yes.
It's really cute.
Yeah, look, it's considered to be a classic because for all the reasons we talked about, I think it's just the strong characters, and of course it's an evacuation story as well. Now you all know about evacuation, and so Miss Rowe, you can go next because yours has certainly got a big element of that to it as well. Do you want to read a bit of it, maybe just read the opening, maybe just the first page, and just for the see if it piques the interest of those who haven't read it.
Meeting. Yes, said Tom bluntly on opening the front door. What do you want? A harassed middle-aged woman in a green coat and felt hat stood on his step. He glanced at the amber on her sleeve. She gave him an awkward smile. I'm the billeting officer for this area, she began. Oh yes, and what's going on to do with me? She flushed slightly. Well, Mr. Oakley, Thomas Oakley. Ah, thank you, Mr. Oakley. She paused and took a deep breath. Mr. Oakley, with the declaration of the war imminent. I can't say imminent. Tom waved his hand. I knows all that. Get to the point. What do you want? He noticed a small boy at her side. It's him. I've come about, she said. I'm on my way to your village hall with the others. What others? She stepped to one side behind a large iron gate which stood at the end of the graveyard, where a small group of children, many of them were filthy and very poorly clad. Only a handful had a blazer or coat. They all looked bewildered and exhausted. One tiny, dark-haired girl in the front was hanging firmly onto a new teddy bear. The woman touched the boy at her side and pushed him forward. There's no need to tell me, said Tom. It's obligatory, and it's not for the war effect. You are entitled to choose your child. I know, began the woman apologetically.
Oh, there we go. So straight into the billeting officer comes a knock in. So Tom is already, the main character is already thrust into it. So that is a classic. So it definitely is one to read. Definitely. Thank you, Dea. Miss Rio, do you want to go next? Seeing as we have the evacuation theme going on, and we have
Second World War is a
and Second World War, yes.
All right. Now to the second.
Well, we're jumping around a bit, really, aren't we?
So I chose Carrie's War. Who's read Carrie's War? You read it? Okay, just two again. This is actually quite similar in a way to Goodnight, Mr. Tom, in that it's a girl called Carrie and her brother Nick, and they get evacuated to Wales from the city. I can't remember if it's from London. I think it's from London.
It is, yeah. It's been a long time since
I haven't read it for a while either.
Common theme tonight. I'm ready for a while.
Yeah. But they're both very apprehensive about it. Obviously, they're being thrust on to people that don't really want them. They go to a woman and her sort of quite grumpy brother, not too dissimilar to Mr. Tom, and they don't want them. They don't want to be there, so it's all a little bit, negative, because everyone's in a bit of a stressful situation. So, but eventually, Carrie and her brother, they start to really sort of love all the people around them in this new village and build a new life for themselves, and they realise, things aren't always what they seem at first. And it's a really nice story, just about two kids kind of...
Yeah, and... Yeah, it is.
Through,
And of course, some of the things, there are a lot of overlaps.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when Day was talking about, someone mentioned about someone wetting the bed.
That happens.
That's happened in this as well.
Yeah, because they're obviously all a bit nervous and upset,
Yeah.
and then the grumpy brother gets really quite cross at them. Mr. Evans, that's it. He gets very cross with them, and they think they're really horrible, but
Yes.
yeah, it's not too dissimilar.
The Mrs. Evans, well, isn't she really nice to them?
She's actually very sweet, yeah, but because in those days, obviously, if you were a man, you sort of made a lot of the rules. The women weren't in the house.
You were the head of the house.
You were the head of the house, so obviously she has to do everything that her older brother says. So she's actually really sweet, and she sneaks them biscuits and takes them out to dances and things like that, but she has to do it all in secret.
And of
which
course,
is a good part of the story.
of course, we should also add Carrie's War. The title is kind of like a double meaning, isn't it, as well?
Yes, it's her own war inside of herself. But yeah, it's even though it's got the backdrop of war and evacuation, it's actually just a really sweet story about, finding family and friendship with people that aren't your...
Yeah, there's the boy, isn't there? I can't remember his name, that she becomes friends with.
Yes, and she becomes friends with another woman who lives in the village who has like a big house out of the village, and they're all a bit of a ragtag group, aren't they? There's the really old rich lady who seems very harsh at first, but she's actually really sweet, and her and Carrie have a nice relationship. And I think one of the women, she has a son with cerebral palsy, and so he can't speak properly, and at first they are a bit put off by that, but then they learn actually he's really nice and he loves gardening and things like that, and it's just nice. It's just nice.
Would you say that war actually features World War II features prominently at all? Apart from the fact, a little bit?
There are because obviously they go to the country, so you don't have the Blitz in the same way as you would in books set in London. But there are soldiers, they go to dances with the soldiers and things like that, and there's rationing, and they play they dance to wartime music a lot. So it's kind of like the war is there, but it's not the main part of the story, which I think is what I always liked about it.
Yeah.
When I read it when I was younger.
Yeah, other than it caused them to be evacuated, and they wouldn't have met these people if it wasn't for the war.
Yeah.
So
that's kind
war
of
can be a good thing, children.
Well, no, you can find good things out of bad times.
Yes, that's a better way of putting it. I think we'll go with that.
That's kind of the story,
rather than my.
Well,
it's like last week I said I was reading Unbound Songbirds and Snakes. They had their own war in that book.
Mm-hmm.
And all the people in the school, they had homework, and they were given to write an essay about the things that they enjoyed about the war. And the main character, he wrote about how he liked the control, how everything was controlled, especially where they lived, how things were more in control. And he also liked, just being there, and he just liked the food that they were given as well. And once in a while go seeing his friends, like the happiness and go seeing other people as well. Yeah,
that's a good point. It's kind of like small things seem even better when you've got sort of a more stressful backdrop, I suppose, not too dissimilar to current times, really.
Yeah, you could argue that. Yeah, the different sort of adversity we're under.
Yeah.
That we're gradually emerging from now.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a good one because it's just about real people and real sort of experiences. The ones that are set, in the trenches and really on the front lines are good, but I think if you don't know much about the war, they can be a little bit overwhelming, which is my memories of reading this book. I suddenly went, oh, the war kind of...
It's good that a few of the books
with other people.
It's good that we talk about this. There was Skylark's War, there was Good Night, Mr. Tom as well. It's good that we're looking at these ones as well as just the trenches.
It might be in a different book, but isn't it the really rich house where they go? Isn't it that there's a skull in there? And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a big secret, isn't there?
I didn't want to mention it because I didn't.
No,
want
we
to
can't
spoil
give it away,
anything,
but there is a big
skull. No, that's not spoiling anything. I just didn't know how to bring it up without spoiling it. But yeah, there is a story around a skull. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd definitely recommend reading this if you're
Yeah.
interested, girls. If you haven't read it.
I want to read the book now.
Oh yes. Good.
Yes,
Yes.
Evie, had your hand up. What did you want to say?
No, I wasn't.
Oh.
Oh, you were
Okay.
just...
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you,
Well,
Mr.
Carrie's
Ian.
War. That's my
Carrie's War.
my
Excellent.
recommendation.
Good choice. Thank you.
Who hasn't spoken? Evie. hasn't.
Yes, Evie, do you want to... And then we'll have Sienna.
We'll do a swap.
Yeah, you don't have to sit back by the camera now. It's just looking after herself. So, right, what have we got, Evie?
So I've got When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit.
Ah,
I've got the entire series of this at home, and I still haven't read it, which I think is a bit of a mistake, and I'm definitely getting into reading it. But I have, just now I read the first page in the blurb, and it sounds really interesting. So it's all about Judith Clark when she was a young girl growing up in Berlin, and this was in 1933. It was when World War II was just starting and Hitler was just starting to take control of Germany. And she's obviously, and obviously the character Anna in this is obviously based off Judith Kerr. And she's young, and on the blurb it said, like, she was too busy with school and too busy having fun to listen to the grown-ups talk. And then as she got older, their family kind of went all over the place, but their main target was to escape to England. So they went to Switzerland, they went to Paris for a bit, and then they eventually managed to get to England because their father is wanted by the Nazis because they are a Jewish family. And I don't know why, there's something about this book, because when my mum bought it for me, I was like, is this about Hitler stealing a teddy bear? I was so confused. But now I think I should read this because I've got this at home. I think
tonight.
Yeah,
yes.
I should
Hopefully
definitely.
you've inspired yourself just by talking about it.
This is quite. There's 2 more books. I didn't bring them in, but there are 2 more books I have at home. It's called Archie's War and Flossie's War, and they're in a series. They're diaries. So Archie's War is based on World War One. So Archie's brother, he's an underage soldier who was fighting because the expectation was that everyone was fighting, and obviously I really like those books because there's always like there's obviously yes it is a kids book, they have like little letters and stuff that you can open. Also takes a real like look inside to like what those kids are actually experiencing. And then Flossie's War is the sequel, and Flossie is Archie's daughter, and unfortunately her mother died when giving birth to her little brother.
Oh.
And he's had to go off to war, leaving her siblings and her extended family who've evacuated to the country from London with her. And so they go lots of crazy things, and one of the things that happens is a fighter bomber crashes into one of the farm fields, and the pilot, who was on fire at the time, he walked in, he knocked on the farmhouse door, and the farmer's wife beat him up with a rolling pin.
Oh dear. Oh no.
and got the police involved. It is quite funny, but it's the way that like she'd write it as in like it's a diary.
It's a comic strip though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a diary in a picture form, and
Yeah.
as you said, there's like little nooks and crannies. So you open up this flap and there's like a letter that her dad wrote to someone or whatever.
Yeah.
The little things like that, and like this is his medal. It's all very interactive and fun.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
especially with things like World War One and World War Two, it's quite close to my heart because I had 9 grandfathers they were all brothers, that went to World War One and they all came back.
Oh wow.
They all became golfers, which was quite
That's incredible.
very
Not
different.
well. Both it is incredible. They all became golfers actually.
Yeah.
That's even more incredible that they all came back, because that certainly is very unusual.
Yeah,
So,
and then they I think they became quite famous golfers.
Are they like your great?
They're my
probably great. I would
yeah
say,
yeah, but
because for us, it's great grandfathers for World War One.
Yeah.
My great grandfather fought in World War
My
One.
grandma was little during the Second World War,
Right.
So her dad would have been.
Yeah, that makes
There
sense.
we go, yeah.
That makes sense.
This gets a bit complicated, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I remember my dad would always tell me, especially because he's had a close relationship with his dad. He's got the same name as my granddad and the same birthday.
Oh.
9th of September.
Wow.
So
Feels like there should be a book written about them.
Yeah.
There's a project for you.
maybe, but there's stuff. I don't know. It's always just something that I've always liked reading about, and I'm definitely going to read this book at home.
Yes, you absolutely should.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned this one because obviously we alluded to Nazi Germany earlier. That it's good to get things from the German perspective as well, and certainly Nazi Germany, and of course what a horribly oppressive regime it was.
Yeah.
So yes, do read it and let us know what you think. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Starting it tonight.
Absolutely.
I read it and it was really good.
There we go. High praise indeed. All right, thank you, Evie. Thank you very much. Right, Sienna, you have something for us, yes?
I do.
Something she hasn't read before, but she has it. So you found it.
Hmm.
So it's a poem, yeah?
Yes.
Because obviously World War One poetry, war poetry in general, there's quite a lot of it. So what have you got for us?
It was written in 1951, so after the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Strangest Dream. I'll read it out. Last night I had the strangest dream I'd never dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. I dreamed I saw a mighty room, the room was full of men, and the paper they were signing said they'd never fight again. And when the paper was all signed and 1,000,000 copies made, they all joined hands and bowed their heads, and grateful prayers were prayed. And the people in the streets below were dancing round and round, and swords and guns and uniforms were scattered on the ground. Last night I dreamed the strangest dream I'd never dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war.
Wow, what a lovely sentiment.
Good.
So what
Yeah.
you just that would just caught your eye?
Yeah. I just thought, well, like, the section is called Peace in Our Time, and I just thought when it was written, all the conflict had just about ended, and how after the First World War, they called it the Great War. They thought that would be it. It's the war to end all wars. And then the Second World War happened. So, I think...
Some people in the same lifetime, wasn't it, if they were like a teenager in the First World War?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
No.
And of course, we haven't had World War III yet, but there are still wars going on.
They were hoping that peace would stick, and...
They were hoping that humanity would learn
Yeah.
from its mistakes, but
put an end to war.
alas. But
Yeah.
well,
Thought
thank
it
you
was a
very
good poem.
much. Right, Lulu, you timed that perfectly. Have you? So you know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Have you got something to talk about? If not, I can talk about what Miss Huntley was going to talk about to get you a few minutes.
Do you mind giving me a few minutes?
Yeah. Okay. Right. So. Well, we'll see how much time there is. I've got to talk about what Miss Huntley wanted to talk about. Otherwise, I'm in trouble. So, Lord of the Rings. You all know Lord of the Rings, don't you? Yes, of course you do. Now, of course, there is a war, but you might be thinking, now, what on earth has that got to do with World War One and World War Two? Well, Tolkien fought in World War One, and his experiences of fighting in the trenches. Now, he didn't fight in World War Two, but I would say to an extent, his experience of being in the UK at the time of World War Two certainly impacted on his writing this story, because there are certain passages. Now, I've got an article here from the New York Times. How J.R. Tolkien found Mordor on the Western Front. So you all know Mordor, yes? So basically, he used his experiences in World War One to inform his depiction of Mordor. And so let's have a look. So the descriptions of the battle scenes in The Lord of the Rings seem lifted from the grim memories of the trenches, the relentless artillery bombardments, the whiff of mustard gas, the bodies of dead soldiers discovered in craters of mud. In the Siege of Gondor, from Return of the King, hateful orcs are digging lines of deep trenches in a huge ring, while others manoeuvre great engines for the casting of missiles. On the path to Mordor, stronghold of Sauron the Dark Lord, the air is filled with a bitter reek that caught their breath and parched their mouths. Tolkien later acknowledged that the dead marshes, with their pools of muck and floating corpses, owe something to northern France after the Battle of the Somme. So here's an example of the real world influencing, what is a very high fantasy world. So yes, of course, it's a different world to ours, but it's an allegory as well. So I'm just going to know. Have you all at least seen the movies of? So you have. You haven't lived.
I've seen one.
Who has seen all of them? Lulu. This is unbelievable. Right, watch them. They're amazing. So, Lulu, you remember in the Two Towers when they go to the Dead Marshes, yes? When Frodo and Sam are going through the Dead Marshes. And so I'm just going to read out a little bit of that. And with Gollum as well, by the way. Hurrying forward again, Sam tripped, catching his foot in some old root of tussock. He fell and came heavily on his hands, which sank deep into sticky ooze. Hello. So, Mr. Close just impersonated tripping for us at the top of the steps for those of you at home. So that his face was brought close to the surface of the dark mere. There was a faint hiss, a noisome smell went up, the lights flickered and danced and swirled. For a moment the water below him looked like some window glazed with grimy glass, through which he was peering. Wrenching his hands out of the bog, he sprang back with a cry. "There were dead things, dead faces in the water," he said with horror. "Dead faces!" Gollum laughed. "The Dead Marshes, yes, that is their name," he cackled. "You should not look in it when the candles are lit." "Who are they? What are they?" asked Sam, shuddering, turning to Frodo, who was now behind him. "I don't know," said Frodo in a dreamlike voice, "but I have seen them too. In the pools when the candles are lit, they lie in the pools, pale faces, deep, deep under the dark water. I saw them, grim faces and evil, and noble faces and sad. Many faces proud and fair, and weeds in their silver hair, but all foul, all rotting, all dead. A fell light is in them." Frodo hid his eyes in his hands. "I know not who they are, but I thought I saw their men and elves, and orcs besides them." So, basically, that he is reimagining, and obviously it was a very traumatic experience for Tolkien, he's reimagining what he saw in No Man's Land when he was out fighting in World War One. So, yes, World War One and Two, bit of that in Lord of the Rings. Are you ready now, Lulu? Yes. Excellent. Come and have a seat over here, then. And thank you for being ready so quickly after just joining us.
Okay. I was trying to think of something outside the box, which I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, we're all for that. Look, Miss Hunter's choice was a little bit outside the box. So.
Yeah, it was. I think we should also celebrate the people that stayed at home during the war and who lost.
We did talk a bit about that as well, but carry on.
I didn't mean that you didn't. I was just wondering.
That's okay.
So I bet you've already read this then. The Land Girls Day?
Oh, I've read that, yeah, but have anyone read Land Girls?
I know what Land Girls are.
Okay. Do you want to just explain to them the story?
The whole story.
Just where you got this from then? Let's just talk about it.
So I looked up poems about women who stayed at home to do what was stereotypically men's jobs. So sometimes they were known as land girls, people who worked on farms. If you've seen Horrible Histories like I have obsessively, then you'll know. Yeah, they're quite cool. So this is called The Land Girls Day by Dorothy Allen. It was written in... Oh my god.
Oh no, is it the...
Everything's just ruined. 1942.
1942? Yes, indeed.
So it's called The Land Girls Day. Sing a song of land girls up before it's light, with 24 jobs to do before the breakfast bite. When the breakfast's over, there's little to be done, except to plough the furrow and let the harrows run, and shear the sheep and top the beat and feed the squealing swine, and brush the hedge and thatch the rick and milk the gentle kine, and spread the muck and sow the wheat and clean and dress the land, and things like that which city folks can never understand. So yeah, I like that. I like the rhyme scheme.
Well, it sounds like it's the Blackbird song. When the pie was open, the birds began to sing. Yeah, so it's just borrowing from like a traditional nursery song. So did you just find that one now, or is it one that you were familiar with before?
I think I've read it before, but I couldn't remember the name. So. Yeah. Do you guys get to go on the Ethan Som trip? That has been advertised to you?
None of them are year 9.
Damn. Well, in year 9 you'll get, probably, if COVID lets you. I think ours was actually the last trip before COVID.
Was it?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that fits, yeah.
Because it went at the end of year 9 and then year 10 was COVID. Yeah. But you get, it's like, I think it's 2 or 3 nights, it might be 2. But you go to Belgium and France and go and visit all the 3 nights.
You went as well then?
Yeah. And then you go and visit all the lots of war memorials and grave sites, and also the battlefield. So you get to see. I'm not predicting the future, but you get to see where they play football famously on Christmas Eve and stuff like that. It's really enriching. The year that we went, they made it a music and an English trip.
Yeah.
And so
Centenary, wasn't it?
Yeah, so people like Inez and Phoebe Gold and people like that, and they all sang at the graveside. There was different songs for different places and different poems, so everyone read a poem. It was really nice. So yeah, would highly recommend that trip.
It is a special experience. It really is.
It's really good, and sometimes you get to, if you have a familial connection to the war, you get to lay a wreath at the I can't remember the gate, but Menin Gate, and I got to do that, and that was really, I don't know, spiritually fulfilling. So
moving.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
If you get to do that, then would do.
Yes, because another thing we should say, again, more spoilers for year 9 for you here. You do a war novels project.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. You
Don't
do a
get
war
bird
novels
song.
project. It's great. Don't do bird song.
Bird songs really bad.
Ooh, controversial opinion. Well, let's not talk about that. I disagree heartily. Yeah, well, we're not going to go down that route.
No.
We'll just respectfully disagree. I'm glad you mentioned the football, because I just thought it would be nice just to finish up. And I've talked about this one before, I know, but I just thought we'd end on it because I just talked about something quite dark, and war can be a very depressing business. But Christmas is not too far away. And of course, very famously, as Lulu just mentioned, there was the Christmas truce in the first year when the two sides famously played football with each other. And this book is about that. Obviously, there's a lot of build-up, but as you can see from the cover, when the guns fell silent, you can stay there, by the way. Okay. Is all about that. So I'll just read out a little bit of... So in previous Litsocs, I've talked about when Silent Night famously starts singing. I'm not going to read that bit. I'll read what happens next. The two choirs, friend and foe, sang in harmony, first sweet and low, then surging up to the rafters of the skies. It was as if an invisible choir master was conducting a heavenly choir. Was there ever more moving carol sung? In the hush that followed, no man dared break the magic spell. For a couple of minutes, deathly silence. Then all at once, a lone German voice rang out. "Hey, Tommy, Merry Christmas!" "And to you, Fritz," shouted Taft Morris. On both sides, both voices took up the cry, "Happy Christmas!" Then loud cheering and clapping. No man's land resounded with friendship and goodwill, to all men, Tommy and Fritz alike. Through the dark, a voice suddenly cut through the greetings. "Hey, English, yeah, what about a Christmas truce? No more shooting, yeah?" And while English trenches fell silent, since all the senior officers had sloped off to Christmas service, there was no experienced officer in command. Evidently, their Christian brothers over the way had done the same. "Right," sang out a loud baritone voice. "I'll take charge. Be it on my head." It was Staff Sergeant Morris. "Okay, boys," he shouted down the line. The roar that met his shout contained all the pent-up feelings of the men. It was the most democratic decision of the war. The soldiers had made themselves heard above the guns on both sides of the divide. "Fine with us," bawled Staff Sergeant Morris. "No firing for Christmas, you have my word." The carols had lit a flame that warmed the hearts of all. Distrust melted in the glow like butter on the hob. More songs were sung. Keep the home fires burning on one side, O Tannenbaum on the other. A mouth organ solo from a German, a bagpipe lament from a Scot, standing upon the bank in kilt and sporran. Goodness knows what Jerry made of that, but Jock got the biggest cheer of the night from both sets of trenches. At midnight, German rifles started firing. For a moment, the British thought the beastly Hun had broken his word. When they realised it was salvo into the air to greet Christmas Day, they sent up very lights, crackling like fireworks in the night sky. 100 yards apart, men waved torches and cheered. "Happy Christmas! And to you, Jack, and you, Harry." So you see, the war did bring out some good in humanity as well. So there we go. So an early Merry Christmas to you all. Right, so that's Litsoc for this week. Now, we're not going to have a Litsoc next week. We know why, don't we?
Because of the musical.
Because of the musicals. So Litsoc will have a 1 week hiatus. Everyone going to see?
My sisters.
Your sister's in. My sister's in it. So I have to go and see it.
It's like the press ensemble with children.
I see. Be supportive, Sophie.
I've just seen the puppet. Guys,
It's
go for the
amazing.
puppet.
It's amazing.
I've
It's
heard
so
great
good.
things
I
about
saw
it.
it on Monday's rehearsal.
I went in the room and I was like, oh my gosh, I did not realise this was a scale. that
I'm
we
I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna try not to see it. I want to be
Don't see it.
blown
Be
away
surprised.
when I see it on stage.
It's-
Please be surprised.
It's so good.
Okay, good. I'm sure. I'm looking forward to it.
I'll probably forget my glasses and I won't be able to see it.
Don't forget your glasses then, because it's going to be. So Lulu's in it. Lulu's in it. Anyone else? None of you in it. Are you? Sienna's in it. Are you in it?
I'm going to see it.
Are you going to see it? So either be, if you're not in it, go and see it. It'll be brilliant. Okay. So Litsoc will return in 2 weeks' time with I can't remember what. But we'll find out then. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye everyone. Bye.